State Representative Joe Saunders. And starting this Tuesday, folks can actually log on to the exchanges and begin the process of buying health insurance for next year. We know that in the state of Florida, state leaders decided we're not going to do it, at least for now. We're going to let the feds come in and run it. What do we know about these exchanges so far?
Well, we know that the federal government is using taxpayer dollars to hire navigators that are not fully trained. Last I saw, there's only a handful in the state of Florida, so people are going to be on their own. I think it was 12. Yeah, it's a very small
50
number.
50 applied of the 150, but 12 had been, I think, approved.
Okay. Also, that there's some real questions that the administration has acknowledged that are a concern about things like identity theft because of the very light regulations on these navigators of what type of information they'll have access to, and Attorney General Holder acknowledged that that's something that needs to be worked on. And I think the biggest problem is the technology is not yet secure from everything that has been reported in the press, and some of the states and entities are not going to be ready to do it on time. This whole law, Senator Baucus labeled a train wreck before, and I think he was absolutely right, and even the unions are concerned about this. And just today it was reported other unions now jumping on the bandwagon to say either substantially change this or dump the whole thing.
Okay, the navigators are a real point of discussion here in Florida. They're supposed to be folks that can answer your questions if you have questions about the Affordable Care Act and coverage and prices and all that. A lot of Democrats would say that the governor is stymieing these navigators from doing their job.
You know, I just want to point out a point of irony. Scott's talking about positions that the labor unions have taken on. I'm talking about positions that the Chamber of Commerce has taken on. This debate is just all over the map.
It is all over the place, yeah.
But
that's why people are so confused.
Here's what I think is really important for people to understand about the exchanges. First of all, Florida had a chance to do their own exchange. So a lot of the problems that Scott just addressed about the national exchange could have been addressed if the state of Florida, one of the largest states in the country, had decided to do it our own way. We do that on any number of different policies. The Florida way, I think we should have done that this time around, and we would have been able to get in front of some of the challenges that he just addressed. Yes, we need to be crystal clear on the rules on privacy, but people need navigators. This is a complex new system that involves any number of tiers, hundreds of plans of different premiums, different deductibles, different levels of service. People, especially the ones who will qualify for the subsidies, need help. And I think this is the other really important point to make about the exchanges. Most people, Scott has made a lot of points about cost. Most people will qualify for subsidies from the federal government, which means that if you're someone my age, if you're a 30-year-old man, he's talked a lot about young people, if you're a 30-year-old man who doesn't have coverage right now, at the end of the day, you will get access to health insurance for about the cost of your cell phone, maybe $100 a month, maybe a little bit more based on the numbers we've seen for Orlando. The Republicans at the federal level and in Tallahassee need to get out of the way of this bill and let it work. It needs time to breathe. There are going to be glitches in the system, but we have 6 months of enrollment. We have 6 months to make this first round work, and obstructionism for the sake of obstructionism and ideology is not the way to make sure that families have health insurance.
But I imagine he would argue that it's not for the sake of obstructionism and ideology. The Republicans are genuinely worried this thing could crash the economy.
Well, and I'm not in the legislature right now, but I think one concern would be is the federal government created this on a single party vote. It obviously has massive unintended consequences, and I am of the belief that this thing is going to implode upon itself through an actuarial death spiral at some point.
Let me ask you this.
Young people aren't going to sign up, and only older and sick will, and rates will go up, and then it'll get worse and worse. So the governor, in terms of the offices, said, well, no, they can open up an office right next door to it and sign people up. But, the federal government, think about it, hiring navigators, which are more or less like insurance salesmen, and then buying ads on porta potties and different, and these ads, is that what the federal government should be doing?
Well, I'm not sure that's a fair comparison. The navigators don't benefit financially in the same way that an insurance salesman does. These are folks who will help people understand a complex system and help them identify what their needs are, what their own personal health concerns are. Remember that there's a whole world of people who've been banned from health insurance because of pre-existing conditions who will now have access to important care. HIV/AIDS patients, cancer survivors, all kinds of people who literally either couldn't afford it because the premiums were too high or were told outright you were not allowed to have it. People are going to need help, and that's what the navigators are for, and Governor Scott needs to get out of the way.
Scott, last question goes to you. Instead of defunding Obamacare, instead of trying to dismantle it bit by bit, why not implement it and then fix it bit by bit over the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I think for most Republicans in Washington and Tallahassee, believe that this is a fundamentally wrong way to go. And the Republican plan in Washington was just recently released that would provide $20,000 tax credits for families, $7,500 for individuals, allow people to shop across state lines, allow small groups to buy together. So it would effectively, that type of approach, and they added $25 billion to help people that, that you just described. Obamacare is using government to smother our healthcare situation, and like I said, I don't think it's sustainable in the long term, and I think a lot of people are starting to figure that out.
All right, guys, I got to squeeze in the last commercial break. We'll be right back.